They make you be in a class action if you don't want to be in a class action?
You can always opt out and try your own case in the end. It's very difficult to do that. Most people just end up being with the class. I've been racking my brain trying to get away from the class as much as I can,
right.
And that's what I do with the guys that have gotten sick over the dispersants.
But see, I can understand with something like the dispersants where there could be some advantages to a class action because you've got one dispersant, and then you've basically got one human body, although its effects may differ. On both ends of the claim, you've got some similarities. But when you get down to economic loss claims from this incident, they seem to be just about as individual as you could get from being a deckhand or a part-time fisherman that was working offshore, and now to a guy that owns a big factory, to a guy that owns oyster leases, to a guy that maybe was selling diesel to boats from his dock.
That's right.
I mean, I would hate to be a person in the recreational boating industry. God, what a pretty picture you got there.
That was some of the first things that was shut down, the people that go out just a day shrimpers.
Right. What about the guy with the sailboat, though?
The sailboats.
And so, I don't want to go out now because the water's all oily and it's nasty, so I want to sell my sailboat. Well, who's going to buy it?
What about animals? I noticed this kind of, but Lisa, who loves animals, Lisa Hicks, who called, I think she actually married, her and her dog got married. She said, why not? He's my best friend. But did the animals have any, the deaths, the oil, is there any lawsuits or litigation with animal deaths?
Well, in Arlen, where I was really going with this is, it seems to me as an attorney, okay, we had talked when you were on the show a few weeks ago about class actions, but there's another thing that's less heard of that I wanted to bring the concept out to our audience called interpleader. In other words, can't BP say, look, I know you've got a gajillion individual claims. I mean, can they go belly up or just say, if they've got insurers, say, well, this is all the money we got and you guys go fight over it? Because I don't see where a lot of people are going to want to go in a class. I mean, if I had a marine industry that was ruined, or if I rented slips for sailboats and that business was decimated, I don't see how you can really handle those people as class members in the traditional plaintiff sense.
That's a good point. I don't think you can either. I mean, and that's what I don't like about classes too, is that they lump everybody into classes and they just have no business being together. This person lived this far from the Gulf, so they get X amount of dollars. Well, that person that lived further away may have worked harder and may have been on the water more, So it's very difficult to class people together. And this is going to be the stickiest, messiest, most long and drawn-out legal battles that we've seen in a long, long time. It's very interesting to see where it's going to go. Transocean's now filed their limitation in Houston. That's where BP wants to be. They all want to be in Houston.
Because they don't got no culture in Texas, so they won't know what that is, huh?
But for the people, I think, and I know lawyers may not want to hear this, but for the people, the solution should be all the oil companies that have ever done these kind of things, that have done this kind of exploration. They should put money in together, and actually Obama's already talking about getting the tax breaks away from them, put a massive pool together of money so we can protect the coastline in the future, build the barrier reefs, the barrier islands that Jindal, Mr. Nationalist now, is talking about. He loves the federal government when it comes to demanding the Army Corps to build these barrier islands and to demand them to get these everything we want, spare no expense. But 6 months ago, we didn't need any government for anything. But have people go to a place where they can fill out a claim, and the government, hopefully it won't be too much bureaucracy, they can go to...
No way.
But they can get their claim dealt with instead of a litigation type of an environment, and then we can have the money almost as an insurance plan to make sure this doesn't happen. A lot of people were saying if the limit was not $75 million, which again was a law passed under Bush administration to cap the minimum damages.
Wait a minute, let's back that up again. Arlen, I know you talked about that. Wait, did you say there was a limitation?
Well, there was the limitation of the bill that was passed under the Bush, that there's the cap of $75 million for any oil spill. Now, BP says we've already exceeded that and we will pay all the claims, but Transocean, as you know, is doing their livelihood. But what about...
Arlen, can BP just come in and say, look, we're over our $75 million, so we're not interested in paying your damages. We changed our mind and we have a legal right to do that?
It could have, but they could. But, they're already in such trouble with public relations that I would think that they would never try to do that because, like Dave said, there's a $75 million cap. They've decided to go above it. They've already said that they're going to pay all legitimate claims. If they pull back on that, I mean, if they think they're hated now, oh my God, I can't even imagine what would happen at that point.
Yeah, but they are, after all, British Petroleum.
234 years ago, the British tried to do this, but now 234 years later, a British...
Yeah, I saw some of the footage, spot mass media shot of the protest. One of the speakers had a Battle of New Orleans T-shirt on, and I didn't get it at first, but it was the British. It sure was. It was the British back then, and it's the British again.
But if the cap was $10 billion or the cap was a huge amount, then they think twice about cutting costs on that blowout preventer. Then they think twice about the safety of our coast.
But wait.
When it could actually cost them less money to be safe.
Attorneys, you're telling me, though, that as far as we know, this $75 million cap is valid. It hasn't been tested. No one's saying it's unconstitutional.
The cap... go ahead.
We could have gotten around the cap anyway, I think, because there's for gross negligence and for I've forgotten the verbiage of it, but you can and I don't think there's any question there was some gross negligence here. I mean, it's
okay. So there are some loopholes that would allow if a person were. I mean, yeah, okay.
Yeah, that was pretty much for a hurricane destroying a rig. And then they figured, well, that's the cap, $75 million, act of God.
Whose idea was that $75 million cap anyway? Who was the genius that thought that up?
Well, that was after the Valdez.
Oh, so they destroyed a whole bunch of natural area in Alaska and decided that they should let Exxon off the hook if it ever happened again? What was the thinking, Ron?
Right. Same thing with I think after the Titanic, and they realized that it could wipe out a company if there was a catastrophic loss. So they said, we're going to, as long as they're okay, as long as they didn't know what was going on, and if it's just an iceberg that comes out of nowhere, they can limit their liability to the value of the vessel.
Yeah, it sounds like something Queen Victoria would come up with.
Or Sarah Palin.
Yeah.
Or Sarah Palin.
Where is Sarah these days?
I've never had Sarah Palin and Queen Victoria mentioned in the same sentence before. That's an awesome concept.
But the latest comment was that she says that the reason Obama is not moving fast enough to clean this oil is because of all his friends in the oil business, all of his buddies that he's played. I mean, what else can you say besides the world is flat? What else can you say?
Well, a lot of people have buddies in the oil industry. Okay, I want to comment a little bit, and you guys, pipe in and let me know, and Carmen especially because you're a non-lawyer.
No pun intended.
But I think there are a couple of things I'd like our listeners to keep in mind when they decide if you feel like you have a loss from this oil spill and you don't know where to turn, you don't know what to do. One thing I would suggest to you is that it could get to be a fairly complex matter, and getting a lawyer is probably a real good idea because you might think your losses are a lot less than the law thinks they are, and I think BP could take advantage of that. The second thing I would tell you is that I think it's a good idea to get a lawyer, especially if you have a previous relationship with someone and you feel like you can trust them and that they're interested in your claim, rather than going to these big warehouse law firms that are just collecting claims. Because in the end, you would like to have an attorney figuring out what's going on instead of a secretary or a paralegal,
right.
Which is what happens in the
There's a lot of
big
mistrust with attorneys right now.
Right.
Nobody knows if they can trust this attorney, and
it happens
money.
though.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens that sometimes attorneys need to get the help of other attorneys. And, what attorney, or whether to be in the class or not, and that type of stuff is something your attorney might have to get help from another lawyer, which, again, you can consent to as a client. But not everyone, I think, I'd be a little bit like, Arlen was saying, maritime lawyers, but I would definitely want to have somebody that you can reach on the phone that you think is interested in your claim, because he can get a maritime lawyer. He's a lot better at figuring out who's the real deal and who's just kind of scamming, trying to make money off the situation, and who really knows something about the area of law you need to know about. Arlen, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree with you. And, under most circumstances, I don't want to get anybody too mad that might be listening to the radio, but under most circumstances, I would not go with a TV attorney. There's a reason that they're on TV, not necessarily that they can't get clients or whatever, but that they do a volume business. and you never want to go with somebody that's doing a volume business. And and there's another reason why you don't want to say it's got to go to trial.